Take two. For some reason, Facebook deleted or it shut down on this Facebook Live as I was trying to run it live. So those of you who are here live, say hi or just give me a thumbs up or a heart so I know that you're here. And those of you who are joining us on the replay, welcome. Hi, my name is Vanessa Horn. And I'm here today just to share with you, to empower those of us who are entrepreneurs or individuals to deal with some of the deeper stuff that's going on inside of our hearts. And one of the biggest topics that I think all of us face is, how do we deal with fear? How do we deal with fear? And so I want you to just give me an acknowledgement in the chat if you have a awareness of any fears that are present for you as an entrepreneur, or those of you who are creating success in your life. There's still this little nagging fear in the back of your mind. And I just want to encourage you that you're not alone, that I work with entrepreneurs at all levels, and fear is present for all of us. And I've experienced a deeper level of facing my fear over the last 9 months that I want to share with you guys, because although I went through one of the most challenging things that I could have experienced personally, it has ended up being one of the greatest gifts to me in my life. Because what it did was it brought to my awareness some deeper subconscious fears that I had, to which I wasn't even present. And I don't even know if you can relate to that, because most of us are so busy going that we don't slow down long enough to be present to the emotions, sometimes the uncomfortable emotions, and sometimes the deeper fears. Well, 9 months ago, I had no choice, because I don't know if you may know this, but some of you who follow my work know that I'm very open about the fact that on this path to building entrepreneur businesses and helping other entrepreneurs, I experienced adrenal fatigue and exhaustion last fall. And as a result, there were multiple parts of my body, my mind that shut down. Parts of me that I relied on that I no longer had access to. And I don't know if any of you have gone through this, but this is very, very common. And raise your hand if this is you, but many of us who are in our 30s, up to 50s, but sometimes beyond that, in this range of life, what ends up happening is ailments start showing up in our bodies. Different things, maybe limitations that we didn't have previously, start showing up, and we can just discount them, right? Maybe it's injuries that have been occurring because we're active physically. Maybe it's injuries just because of, quote unquote, getting older, or maybe it's injuries, or maybe it's ailments health-wise, and we discount. But I believe that there is deeper wisdom that our body is trying to speak to us when we are experiencing ailments, when we are experiencing things that are crying, screaming at us, trying to get our attention. And that is what occurred to me 9 months ago when I experienced adrenal exhaustion. And I don't know if any of you guys can relate to some of these symptoms, but I'll share with you a little bit, but that's not the point of this Facebook Live. The Facebook Live here is to reveal how we might not be experiencing the breakthrough of the deeper fears that are running our subconscious and running our behaviors, because we're too busy to slow down long enough to feel them. How success and achievement actually might be great cover-ups for us to not deal with them, and therefore we limit ourselves from experiencing the breakthroughs that we desire. And what we might be ignoring that we could give heedance to that could create that next breakthrough that we really desire. So what happened 9 months ago was I completely shut down energetically. I had no energy to get out of bed. No energy. And I do very fulfilling work supporting entrepreneurs and business owners to create their signature work in the world and to attract clients to their work. However, I didn't have any motivation to get out of bed. And I also was experiencing a lot of digestive issues, and my brain this was one of the most difficult things to experience, was my brain was not operating at its typical capacity. Now, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but you're wondering like, where's my short-term memory gone? Or why can't I remember that person's name? Or wait, what was I trying to say? Or you're unable to grasp the words that you're trying to express something. Well, these are some of the things that I was experiencing. Not to mention that I also was experiencing other inflammatory indicators, such as my hands were arthritic, so I couldn't type, which is I'm a writer as well, so I couldn't write. And my voice was, I couldn't speak it. I was experiencing allergy reactions to things, and my immune system was clearly depressed. So 3 main assets that I considered in building the success of my business were my brain, were my voice, and were my hands. And all 3 of those were shutting down for me. And what it had me experience was me facing fears that I did not realize were in my subconscious. Because I did not know, and I don't know if you can relate to this, but many of us, if you will pay attention to the way that you introduce yourself, if you pay attention to the places where you feel a sense of achievement, or you feel a sense of success, or you feel like it boosters your value or your worth in the world, pay attention to what those are, because typically what those are identities that we're holding on so tightly to that is actually preventing us from feeling full freedom. And so what happened for me when I was going through that ailment last fall, 9 months ago, and not having access to my brain the way that I typically would in supporting my clients, in supporting my friends, because my brain was not accessible. I wasn't able to have it function and to serve me in the way that it normally did. Like I said, I would have difficulty pulling words to describe. Now, what I do with my clients is I help them take the work that they do and give words to it so that they're actually attracting their ideal clients in the world. And so that they're able to express what they do in such a way that people say, oh my gosh, I've got to work with you. So-and-so, my friend needs to talk to you. And if you don't have those words, if you don't have those marketing words, many of us who are purpose-driven, who are messengers, who feel like we're here for a purpose, and yet we can't seem to get our message out to the world the way that we want, it's this that we're lacking. We're lacking this capacity to really put it into messaging that resonates with our audience. And so because I serve my clients to do that work, it freaked me out. It freaked me out when I didn't have access to my brain to function in that capacity. And so I'll tell you what happened. I actually had a client who had paid me a substantial sum for me to work with him over the course of a weekend to create his signature work and also to create the marketing words around it. And when he got an indication of what was happening to my brain while I was going through adrenal exhaustion, he wanted to cancel the contract. Now, we're talking about, it was a $20,000 plus contract that he wanted to cancel, and it was because, Vanessa, your brain is not working at its full capacity. I had no idea how much that was attached to a deeper fear. I had no idea how that was attached to a deeper identity to which I was holding on to. I had no idea that by not slowing down, I had not allowed myself to heal a deeper fear that was actually running the show. And all of a sudden, when he wanted to cancel the contract because my brain wasn't operating at its full capacity, I remember sitting at the Panera with my husband, describing to him what was going on. And over lunch, I think a Fuji apple salad, tears were running down my face. And he's like, babe, what's going on for you? And I said, who am I if I don't have my brain? Who am I? Like, what do I have to offer the world? What will I do? what if I don't have my brain to be able to serve me in my business the way that I want to? Here's a guy who's, in essence, it felt like complete rejection because my brain wasn't available to serve him. I felt like I was discarded to the sides. I was discarded, like, what are you worth any good if your brain isn't going to work on my business? Like, it had such a deep core impact on me that I had no idea that there was this underlying subconscious fear that was happening for me. And as I started to examine, right, because I'm a coach, you guys, like I take the time to reflect on what is this inner stuff that's going on, that's manifesting in the external. And when I took the time to really evaluate what was happening for me, I recognized two things. One was that my brain was a core part of my identity. As a matter of fact, as a child, that's where I got early accolades in my academics and, well, let's test her. And all of a sudden I remember feeling like, oh, I must be special. I must be special. Okay, do good in school. That'll have you have the affirmation of adults. Be outstanding, be the best in your class. And so that ended up being a lifetime pattern that I pursued, right? Because I was holding on to my brain as part of my identity. And as I was facing this in my business, as I was facing this ailment of my body screaming at me, it had me recognize how tightly I was holding on to that identity. The second thing I uncovered as I started to really evaluate, hey, what's going on? Why is this hurting so much? Why is this impacting me so much? Was realizing that I had covered up deeper fears in my life through achievement, success, and through my brain, as a matter of fact. And what actually brought this to the forefront was, and I don't know if you've seen this, but it's this movie called Lion, and it's about a little boy in India who got lost and who ended up getting adopted by Australian family, and how he went back to find the roots of his family. He just became like obsessed with finding his roots. Well, there was something that happened to me when I watched that movie. Yeah, Pam says she's seen it. So good. Mario, I saw you give up some thumbs up. How many of you have seen that movie, Lion? It's amazing. I would really recommend it. It's based on a true story. Somebody who wrote this story in a book. And what happened, though, unbeknownst to me, this movie was going to stir up a lot of my experiences as a child that I had suppressed. And many of us, sometimes when we've been through difficult challenges, one of the ways that we deal with it is we suppress it. Well, I watched this movie, no kidding, you guys, I was a sobbing mess. I could not believe the visceral response that I had to this movie. I was like a child, sobbing and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, like this deep, deep sob response to the movie. And it's because I could identify with a number of things that he had been through. And I'll share with you a couple of them to accentuate, like, there's parts of you as a child that has experienced things that are in your subconscious as your fears, that we have found other ways to compensate for them. We've found other ways to cover up. We've found other ways to create what we want, pseudo create what we want, and not actually address those deeper fears. But unless we address them, and my encouragement is to allow yourself to feel all the emotions. Feel all the emotions, and I want you to pay attention, like, how many of us actually are comfortable when somebody has uncomfortable emotions. Most people don't know how to handle it. As a matter of fact, pay attention to how many times someone will hand a tissue, or they'll say, oh, honey, it'll be okay, it'll be okay. Like, they're trying to move you on from feeling the difficult emotions. They're trying to move you on. Don't feel them, let's move on, let's move on. Nobody likes feeling these things, let's move on. And so what happens is we never deal with the deeper fears, the deeper emotions, the deeper healing that needs to take place, that the only way we're going to heal it is to actually allow ourselves the full freedom to feel it all. To feel it all. So I'm grateful because that movie Lion took me to a place to feel deeper emotions than I had ever allowed myself to experience around some particular experiences that I had as a child. Now, keep in mind, being a coach in the work that I do and helping people to navigate, knowing that they're enough, knowing that they have something valuable to contribute to the world, helping them to discover their purpose, helping them to discover their signature work and how to actually put themselves out online. Believe you me that I have heard all kinds of stories and traumatic experiences that individuals have gone through. So as a result, the things that I had been through, I discounted. I said, oh my gosh, that's like nowhere near what I know some people have been through. So I discounted my experiences for so long. Like that's been my life. I've discounted them. I've typically been in leadership positions. And so I've been caretaking of others and hearing horrific stories and thinking, discounting my own experience as a result. But when I watched the movie Lion, it was right there in my face. Like even more so, it was in my body, all these emotions that were stirring up. And I'll tell you just a couple of them. And I want to also point out that some of my experiences in those instances where in some cases my actual livelihood was at question, I was actually having to depend on my brain to make it through. So you can imagine when 9 months ago, when my brain was starting to shut down, when I went through adrenal exhaustion, the capacity to access my brain took me into fear states where my belief that my survival could potentially be at risk was stirred up. And this came from watching this movie Lion, because here's a couple of things that the little guy in the movie experienced that were similar to my experiences as a child. And I'm going to state these, and please know that as I share them, I may state them with a little, I'm not going to dwell on them substantially, but believe you me that there's a ton of emotion behind them that I've experienced and a huge amount of healing that I've done around them. And so as I share them, they may come out as if I don't know, they may come out like I'm sharing them like they were no big deal and like they had no effect on me, but they really did. And so, Cassio, you do have to see this film. So one of the things is that the little boy got run over by a motorcycle. So when I was a little girl, I was 4 years old, and 4 years old ended up being a very traumatic year for me. But my family lived all over the world. My mom's from Brazil, and my dad, and she had this passion to travel the world. So I've actually lived all over the world as a child, but not underneath the greatest circumstances. Actually, very third world country circumstances. And when I watched that movie Lion, and the little boy goes back to see his where he grew up, the scenes of where he grew up was like some of the homes that we grew up in, like dirt floors, no windows. I mean, the animals are right there. And all of us, I'm one of 5, were all home births, right? So we were home births we would tease my sister. We said she was like a manger baby because we were home births on dirt floors, on places without windows. And so this little boy, when he got run over at 4, I was actually in Peru at the time when I was 4, and there was this little girl who ran across the street, and she's like, come. And I remember second guessing myself because I saw the motorcycle coming, and I was like, do I go or do I stay? Do I go or do I stay? And I second guessed myself, and actually that pattern of second guessing myself followed me into my mid-30s before I realized how much I second guessed myself for 70% of the time. And I've done a lot of work, especially just trusting my intuition and making it a practice to go with my first impulse, to go with my first gut instinct, to go with that deeper, that initial prompting that I might have instead of second guessing it. That's been a practice for me. But when I was 4, my friend was calling me across the street, and I see this motorcycle, and I'm like, do I go or do I stay? Can I make it? Can I not? and I ended up crossing. But my hesitation in crossing the street actually had the motorcycle hit me and run over me. So that was traumatic, because here I was in a third world country. The medical conditions for healing that were, I just remember being in a lot of pain, and in this third world clinic holding my dad's hand in tears and in so much pain, and taking eucalyptus baths and everything to try to heal all these wounds that I have all over my body. I still have scars from it. And also what happened when I was 4 was I was put on an airplane because my parents were separating, and then my mom put me on an airplane to try to save me from being, my dad taking me. She wanted to have me, so she put me on an airplane to Brazil, to where her family was. I was 4 years old, and I guess this was permissible back then. It's really remarkable, but I was 4 years old when I was put on a plane to Brazil, and I remember getting to Brazil, walking off the plane, and there was nobody there to greet me. And it was Portuguese. This is the language that's spoken there. But now you have to understand, I knew English and Portuguese. So when they were asking me, what are your grandparents' names? I was like, vavá and vavá, which is Portuguese for grandma and grandpa. So when I saw the movie Lion, and this little boy's walking off the train, and they're like, well, what's your mom's name? And he's like, Mum. And he can't speak Bengali. He can't speak the language. It took me back to when I was 4, and I was put on this airplane to Brazil, and nobody was there to greet me. And they took me to this little office in the airport, and they started grilling me. Like, what are your grandparents' names? Where do they live? And they're like, do they live in Ipanema? Do they live in Copacabana? They started naming all these places in Rio that they could possibly live, and they all sounded familiar. I mean, you could imagine at 4 years old, you're just listening for words that sound familiar. And I was like, yes, like they all sounded familiar. And so it was an instance at 4 years old when my livelihood at a subconscious level, I didn't realize my brain was I don't remember a single adult holding me and saying, like, you're going to be okay. Like, it's okay. You probably feel scared, right? Just acknowledging the emotion that's there and saying you're going to be okay. So I didn't have that comfort from an emotional standpoint, but I was immediately taken to my brain to say, okay, for you to survive, for you to be safe in this instance, you need to access your brain, figure out your grandparents' names and where they live. Well, they eventually did find me, and similar to the little boy in Lion, I had somebody in Rio, in Brazil, who wanted to adopt me as a little girl. I just remember, like, where are my parents? Like, I just wanted, they were trying to adopt me, and they taught me how to swim, and really lovely family, but I wanted to be with my family. And then the other instance, and I'm trying to just really feel into whether or not I feel comfortable talking about this right now. My only point in sharing this, you guys, is that you have likely been through experiences. Thank you, Pam. God, I'm a mess when I get on these things and share with you guys. You have been through experiences as a child, and there's some basic needs that we have, and one is a sense of security. I'm just noticing how fast I talked at the beginning of my Facebook Live. Probably because this is new territory for me to share this with you guys. But we have a sense of need for security, to know like we're going to be okay. We have a need for love and connection. And we have a need for our survivability. So in those instances as a child, there's this other story that I'll share with you in just a moment. But for you, you've likely had experiences that have triggered a fear that you might lose any one of those 3 things. Love and connection, security, or safety, or security or survivability. And those are the subconscious fears that are driving the show. When I lost access to my brain, it was because my fear of losing security, my fear of losing my survivability were being stirred up in such a big way. Why? What happens if I lose my voice, my brain, and my hands, and my business goes out of business? I have to lay off my team. I don't have a business. I start from scratch. I have no money. Like, those are the fears. Like, all of a sudden it was like these not even rational things, like worst case scenarios started flooding into my mind. Why? Because my survivability was at question. If I don't have my brain, my survivability is at question. The same thing is happening for you. If you have anxiety about something, pay attention. Is it fear of loss of love and connection? Is it fear of loss of security? Is it fear of survivability? So this other instance that occurred to me, that when I was 8, actually I was either 8 or 9, and I really hope this doesn't die, the video, but when I was 9, 8 or 9, my parents left me at home with my siblings, and they were at a Bible study, I think, and I'm the oldest of 5, so I was a babysitter. Not a good idea. Do not leave your 8 or 9-year-old at home as the babysitter. What happened was that somebody broke into our house and held a knife to my throat. I was in my bed. And I just remember opening my eyes, and this guy was like hovering in my face, and he was like, "Do not scream or I will cut your throat." And I was like freaking out, right? As a little kid, I remember like having a relationship with God, and so I was just praying. I was just praying and praying at that time. And I was like, if you don't leave, I will scream. Well, the guy ended up leaving. And pay attention to what happened. Not a single adult grabbed me as a little kid that I recall. This is, of course, perception, right? All of our experiences in life are our perception, the way that we interpreted the events. The way I interpreted the event was, I don't recall an adult holding me and saying, "Vanessa, it's okay. You're going to be safe." So the affirmation of the feelings that I was having were never affirmed. And that's happened to a lot of us. I'm very, very conscious, even with my boys, that if they're feeling uncomfortable emotions, that I let them be present with them. I let them be safe. I hold them. I let them to feel the full emotion, because I've experienced so much by others in life where people are uncomfortable with allowing the full feeling of emotion. And so the healing doesn't get to take place. We have to feel the full emotion. And so what happened was, my perception was that I wasn't comforted and said like, "Hey, it's okay. You're probably feeling scared right now." And instead, I was immediately, when my parents came home, I was immediately rushed by the police to the police station, and I was asked to describe what this guy was wearing, what he looked like, and everything, right? What did he look like, Vanessa? What was he wearing? And my brain couldn't remember. I couldn't remember, you guys. I remember thinking like, I better get this right? Here's this dependence on my brain. I better get this right or he could come back. I better get this right or the police won't catch him. I better get this right or maybe my parents are going to be mad at me or the police are going to be mad at me. I better get this right. And it was like, no matter how hard I was trying to remember what he wore and what he looked like, I couldn't remember. Now, the tragic thing is that he did come back, believe it or not. Thankfully, my parents were home this time, and my dad caught him and wrestled him down. But I remember looking at the guy, and he was wearing the exact same thing that he wore the first time he broke into our house. Now, as an 8-year-old, my brain told me, "Vanessa, if you would have gotten it right, he would have been caught. If you would have gotten it right, this wouldn't have happened." Him coming back and some of the things he did the second time. And so again, this dependence on my brain, right? And so what happened when I watched this movie Lion 9 months ago was all this emotion was stirring up, and I didn't even know what the root of it was, but I allowed myself permission to feel all of it and to bring a sense of permission to feel it all and a sense of curiosity to what was going on underneath. And what I understood was how I was using my brain as a greater sense of holding on to that need to feel that I was going to be safe, that I was going to survive. And so I want to encourage you, if there's any emotions that you've been suppressing, where have you been suppressing? And they might be coming out in your body as a way that's screaming out to you saying, hey, pay attention to this, pay attention to me. There's deeper healing to take place here. And with a close friend, somebody you trust, somebody that maybe a confidant or a therapist or a coach, somebody that's in your life that you can trust, allow yourself to feel the full depth of emotion, because that's where you're going to feel the healing. Because this is what happens when we experience as an adult. That may trigger one of those fears that we had as a child of loss of connection, security and safety being at risk, or our liveliness, being alive, being at risk. We actually, our nervous system retracts back to how we were as a child. It's almost as if you almost drowned as a child, but you later on took lessons and you learned how to swim. But let's just say you ended up in the ocean and you could feel the undercurrent and you could feel things pulling at you, and all of a sudden this anxiety and this feeling of like, oh my gosh, like your brain trips back into your child brain, like I could drown right now. And what I realized was, as an adult, I had created success, achievement, busyness, all these different things, my brain, my identity with my intelligence or my capacity to strategize, as life rafts, as lifesavers to hold on to so I wouldn't feel the fear of drowning. And when they were all taken away, when I got sick, it had me choose, what are you going to feel and experience right now, Vanessa? And what it forced me to do was to release, because I couldn't reach them. They weren't accessible to me anymore. My brain wasn't accessible. My business was potentially going down. I had to shut down a whole division of my company and let people go. Even the perception of myself was being questioned, right? Like this success that I so-called achieved, like it could all be disappearing. Then who would I be? God forbid. And it had me really realize, like, either Vanessa, you will constantly run to the next thing to try to avoid feeling these feelings, or you can allow yourself to feel them all. And what happened was I could release those false things that I was holding on to. And there's this beautiful passage that I resonate so much with that is out of the Message, Matthew 11:28, and it says, "Are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out? Come with me. Work with me. See how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I will lay nothing on you that is ill-fitting. Come with me and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly." And what it had me do is to be able to symbolically, as if I was then feeling this feeling of drowning, like, am I really going to make it? It allowed me to just relax and surrender and realize that I could float on the water. I could surrender on the water and I would float. I didn't have to be grasping for the lifesavers and the life rafts in order to live. And so I just want to encourage you. What's my point of sharing all this? Like, why, it's not comfortable for me to share these stories with you and these deeper parts of my heart with you. But the reason why I do is because I want to encourage you to examine, where might you be staying busy? Where might you be holding on to an identity? Where might you be holding on to success or achievement or the pursuit of those things as a way to avoid feeling those deeper feelings and releasing those things that have held you captive for so long? Because they don't have to. Because I'll tell you that the beautiful thing on the other side is those fears aren't running the show anymore for me. They're not. You feel so liberating. It's like, okay, so what if my business went away? It doesn't define me. My success no longer defines me. If my brain disappeared. What's had me do is give a lot more value to taking care of myself and making self-care and my health my top priority versus running away from those fears that were trying to drive the show. It will actually drive your body into the ground if you're not careful. Take care of your body. Take care of yourself. Pay attention to what your body's trying to say to you. Respect it, honor it. I remember one time my eardrum burst. And when it was in the middle of me making some choices that I knew I shouldn't have been making, my eardrum burst. And I thought, you know what? What is my ear trying to tell me? Vanessa, what are you not listening to? What are you not listening to? What are you not hearing that you need to hear? And as a matter of fact, to this day, my hearing in my right ear is not what it is in my left ear. It's been permanently affected. And a constant reminder to not ignore that voice, to not ignore the deeper speaking to me. So I just want to encourage you to allow yourself to go to those places that you might have been trying to avoid, because that's where your healing will occur. To not cover things up by success and achievement, because I've worked with people at all different levels of success, and I'll tell you, there's demons they're running from that it doesn't matter how much money, how much success, how many accolades, how much, recognition they may get in the world. They have deeper stuff that they're dealing with. And so all of us, if you think that you're going to get to some level of success and it's going to go away, no, why don't you allow yourself the feelings of being able to receive pleasure and freedom now? Pleasure and freedom now. So you can be even more powerful in your work. You can be even more powerful in your business. You can be even, in order to help set other captives free, you've got to be free yourself. Where are you holding your own self in captivity when there is an invitation to come with me, walk with me, work with me, see how I do it, learn the unforced rhythms of grace? I will lay nothing on you that's ill-fitting. Come with me and you'll learn how to live freely and lightly. I'm saying yes to that invitation. Are you? Put a yes in the chat if you are. And I hope this message has been encouraging to you. It's not easy, it's not comfortable, and I apologize for the ways it may be a big combobulated mess. I'm taking imperfect action in sharing this story for the first time with you, with my heart that it will serve you and share anything that may have been of benefit to you, something that you took away from today's message. Thank you for joining me, whether you're on here live or on the replay. Lots of love to you. God bless. Beijos. Mwah. Bye.